So today, let's make some geometry node based terrain. We're going to open up the geometry node editor, and I don't have an object, so I need to add one. I'm going to add in plane, and there are two ways basically to set up the base terrain. The first one is you can scale up your plane, and then we can add our geometry node editor. And we can add in a subdivide mesh. So basically, it subdivides the mesh however many times you give it. Essentially just doing this, right-clicking and subdividing, except it's in geometry nodes, so you can always change it to get more or less detail later on. So we can do that. Or we could ignore this group input in general and then add in a grid, which is a certain type of mesh primitive. And if we just plug that mesh into the geometry output, you'll see we get a plane. Here we can change the size to make it bigger, and we can change the amount of subdivisions it has. So I'm going to use a grid just because I prefer doing it that way. Easier to change the size, easier to change the vertices. I'm going to add a value node so that I can use one little value to control the size and the vertex count, and that's just going to make things a little bit easier for me. Now, most terrain generators are based off of noise, right? You've got a random set of black and white values, black defining low points and white defining high points, and you use that to offset certain things. Obviously, there's other methods such as voxels where you can have caves, indents and overhangs and stuff like that. We're going to ignore that. We're just going to do noise based, so you either have low or high, no overhangs, no caves or anything like that, keeping it basic. So what we're going to do is first we need a way to basically displace this terrain. I'm going to add in a set position node, and the set position node allows us to offset our terrain. As you can see, we can offset it in different directions based on the X, Y, and Z coordinates. So that's what we're going to be using in order to create our geometry node terrain. Then we need Perlin noise or any type of noise really. So what I'm going to do is just add in a noise texture, and I can plug the factor into the offset, and you'll see instantly we get some terrain displacement. So in order to make this a bit more intense, we can add in a math node, and we can set the math node to multiply. Basically, if I look at this texture, right, you see we have black values and we have white values, and it's mainly gray because it's kind of averaging between them. If I add in a multiply node, and I'll plug this into the viewer so we can see it. If we had a multiply node, right, black represents 0 and white represents 1. So if you multiply 0 by 1, you get 0. So this value stays the same. But if you multiply 1 by 2, this value gets brighter. So even though it looks like it's super dark, you're going to see when I click out of this, it's actually making these terrains higher and lower and more intense. One thing you're going to notice is that this is offsetting in multiple directions, which isn't really what we want. We want this to just offset straight up. So what we're going to do is we are going to add in a combine XYZ. The reason this is happening is because we are applying one value to all three of these axes. So if I put 10 in, this is getting offset by 10, this is getting offset by 10, this is getting offset by 10 or 40 or whatever I'm putting into it. It's choosing this one value for all three values of this vector. So what we need to do is we need to combine XYZ vector, plug it into the offset, and then we are just going to plug this multiply value into the Z coordinate only, so it's only getting offset on the Z value. And there we go. And now we have our basic terrain. So what we can do, of course, is we can increase the value of our vertices in order to get a little bit more detail, and you'll see it gets a little bit crazy. So I'm going to play around with the roughness and the scale of this terrain to make it like 0.1. And there we go. You'll see we get a much smoother terrain if I set this to a very low value. What I can also do is I can add in another value node, plug it into the scale, and then add in a math node, set it to divide and divide it by a value of like 100. And that way, we get a lot more control over how much this scales. Now, one thing you may notice is that this terrain is being offset upward quite a bit. One way to fix that is we can add in another set position node and set these to 0 for now. And I need to offset this Z value by a negative value. So I'm going to set it to about here. So negative 8.5. So basically then all we need to do is we need to take this multiply value. See, it's at 25 right now. And we're going to divide it by 3. So I'm going to get another math node. We're going to divide it by 3 to turn it into 8. Oops, divide by 3. Or negative 3. And then we can plug that value into a combine XYZ Z value and plug it into the offset. And now, as I offset this value will roughly stay in the same spot, as you can see. It doesn't really get offset too much. Whereas before, it was being offset like this, where it just keeps on going upward. So this way, we can keep that offset a little bit cleaner so it's not, flying away. This is good for like rolling hills, but we can also make these mountains. One way to do it is we can just play around with this stuff, change the roughness, and there we go. We've got something that's sort of mountainous. But a better way to make mountains is instead of using the noise texture set to FBM, we can change it to ridged multifractal. And then if we play around with our roughness and our detail, and primarily the gain and distortion a little bit, maybe the lacinarity. Right, this way we can get much more mountainous terrain. Now, I'm actually going to set the offset to, I think, 1, and I'm going to bring the gain down to 1. If you enjoy making landscapes in Blender and you want to make them very easily and very quickly, then go over and check out my newest add-on, Geoscapes. It's an all-in-one terrain generator add-on for Blender that allows you to create custom terrains by dragging and dropping nodes. It includes a ton of different features like preset terrains, custom masks and effectors, simple-to-use procedural and simulated erosion, custom distribution for rocks, trees, and other objects, and real-time shader masks that you can edit on the fly. If you're interested, the add-on is called Geoscapes, and it's available on Blender Market and Gumroad. Go check out my other assets as well if you want to support the channel. Now, back to the video. Right, now if I just play with these settings, primarily the gain, the distortion, the detail can stay where it is, but gain, distortion, roughness is kind of the main one to get sort of a mountainous terrain, as you can see. And now we have these huge mountains. I'm going to set this to 300, maybe even 400, right? And then we have this very mountainous terrain. Now, you can see it's very blocky looking, so what we can do is we can do a set shade smooth, and at the very end, and that way it smooths everything out. We could also, we have kind of these sharper peaks. If you wanted at the very end, you could use a subdivision surface, which is, the Boolean, or I'm sorry, not the Boolean, the modifier you can add that smooths out your surfaces, right, to kind of unharshen those peaks. And suddenly we have a large mountain terrain that looks not bad. Then, of course, you can change this into a group. I've made a lot of videos on doing that, so I'm not going to do that right now. I'll let you guys do that. What we're going to do now, though, is go into texture. You can texture this inside of geometry nodes and make it basically a full geometry node setup. However, I'm not going to do that because you got a lot less control, and it's a little bit blocky looking because it's based on how many vertices you've got. So first thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to add in a set material, and we are going to add a new material, and then just select that material in the set materials material slot. Sorry, I said that a lot of times right there. And you know what word. I'm going to name this as mountain or terrain or something. And we are going to do some very, very easy texturing. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to make a mask based on the slope of our terrain in order to basically make a mix between rocks and either snow or grass or whatever. We need to calculate the slope. So the way to calculate the slope is we need a normal map. If we check out a normal map, you'll see we get these purple and bluish hues, right? These represent the direction that each face is facing. And we can separate these faces based on their X, Y, and Z values. So if I plug this through here and we separate by the X value, you'll see all the faces facing the X direction are set to white, and all of them facing the negative X direction are set to black. Same thing for the Y direction, and of course, same thing for the Z direction. Now, the Z direction basically allows you to figure out slope. So if we throw in a color ramp here, we can bring this black value up, and you'll see suddenly that wherever this slope is very, very steep, it becomes black, and wherever it's not very steep, it all becomes white. So we can essentially mask out these two areas like this. Now, you can do it this way, or if you want to turn it into a group later, you can do it with a map range node, which is generally what I prefer to do. All you really have to do is you can change this from min value to make that black slope become stronger. And if you want the blend between these two to be a lot harsher, you can turn up the 2 max value to essentially make it a very harsh cutoff between black and white. So once you're happy with that, what you can then do is essentially make 2 separate shaders and mix them. If you've got Node Wrangler, you can do Control-0 and it'll create a mix shader. And then if we plug this map range into the factor, then we can choose a mix between these 2 separate terrains. So I can make my stone material, Control-Shift-T, if I've got Node Wrangler add-on enabled, and then I can go find any sort of rock texture that I've got. We can just use this one, and I'll quickly set it up. Right, there we go. I'm going to plug object mode, and I'm going to select all of these, and we are going to hold Alt, click on flat, and change it to box, and then hold Alt again, and turn the blending up. I'm just going to set this to like 0.1. We get a much larger terrain, and there we go. Already you can see that these mountains look mountainous. I can turn up this this value, this normal map value, so it's a lot stronger. Right, and there we go. Looks a little better. And then of course I can add in a grass texture. Let's go to textures, natural. And I need to find another grass. And this one should be okay. So I can just select all of my different maps and import them in here. Do the exact same thing. Set my mapping to object mode. And then I'll set this to like 0.2. Actually, no, I'm going to set this to like 2, actually. And there we go. Now I want to make this look better. So I'm going to turn down the specular. And it'll look like that, which, you know, it's whatever. And there we go. Looks pretty decent. I can, of course, add some RGB curves because I don't really like the color of this grass. So I can make it like that. Get rid of some of the green. And there we go. We've got super basic mountainous. And yeah, I can use my map range to basically decide how much the grass grows. Now, of course, it might be a little weird to see grass on top of these mountains in areas like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my mask, add in a mixed color node. And if I have a mixed color node, I can mix together 2 separate values in order to create a new value. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add in a gradient texture and basically make a height mask. So with the gradient texture, I can plug that into the B value, set mix to multiply, and essentially if I set mix to multiply and I turn it all the way up, and then I'm going to add in a color ramp, and I'm going to bring these values closer together. You'll see nothing happens yet because I need some mapping coordinates. I'm going to change this to object mode, rotate it by 90 degrees on the y-axis, and play with this value, and there we go. You can see that we get this black value that goes upward, and then we have this white value on the top. And then if I multiply these 2 values together, you can see we can have a mix between the 2 of them, right? And I can do a negative 90 because what I actually want is for the black value to be on top of the mountain. And then, if we mix these 2 together, you'll see that grass doesn't grow at the very top of the mountain anymore because of this gradient texture. So we can control the height of the grass, how high it can grow. So we control that, and we can control the overall slope of the grass, which is really nice. This makes things look a little bit more realistic. I'm going to have it blend a little bit more, so it's just a little more natural to me. There we go. There we go, right? We got super basic mountains, nothing crazy going on. But yeah, if you need really quick geometry node based mountains, you've got them instantly here. And then, of course, you can change them at any time. If I change this to 4D, I have the seed value in my geometry node setup. Sorry, I didn't mention that I was changing that. And suddenly I can just change the way these mountains look. I can change their height. I'm a lot stronger. And yeah, it's just a super quick way to make some mountains. So anyway, if you have enjoyed the tutorial and you want to see more, then please make sure to subscribe and make sure to go check out my new add-on GeoNodes. There is a 10% off discount for the add-on right now. It is designed to create tons and tons of landscapes very easily, essentially using methods like this with geometry nodes and shaders. So if you're interested in making landscapes and you want to make them with ease, go check out Geoscapes. It's available on Blender Market and Gumroad. It's cheaper on Gumroad, so go over there.